All right. So the situation is I have a div and I would like to center it vertically and horizontally on my page. What do I do? So I'm going to set this up. That is, what do I do in a world where you have no idea that Flexbox is even a thing? I'm going to set this up. I don't need that. And I'm going to put the div here. And then I've provided a little bit of starter code to get myself cracking just so we can see the div. And let me open this up. All right, so here is my div. I wish that had a lighter background so it would be easier to see. Give a background color of CCC. That's right. All right, so there's my div. I want to center it. What should I do? Thoughts as to what I should try? Well, first off, let's just start with centering it horizontally. How would I do that?
Text-align center.
Text-align center, yep, that's one way to do it. So I would make this an inline block. Oh, damn it, QuickTime. I need to find better software. Display, inline block. And then I'll say text align center. All right, cool. So my div's now centered horizontally. Now what do I do to get it centered vertically? What's something I could try?
You could guess this would add it or something like that.
Yeah, totally. So I could do like margin top, I'm going to guess 300 pixels. All right. Ooh, good for me. That was pretty good. Of course, the downside of that is if I resize the page, it is no longer in the middle anymore. So that doesn't really work unless the screen size is always exactly the same. That's something else I could try.
Percentages?
Okay, cool. So that would be, let's see. So I could do position relative, and then top, like 45%. Oh, no, that's not going to work. Except I'm not sure. Oh, because now this, oh, well, so now this needs to be a block, which means it's going to go back to the left. So now I need to do margin 0 auto on this thing. That should put it back in the center. Okay, cool. And then, where are you not working? Oh, maybe I can't do percentages with, oh, I guess I can't. Okay, so I'll try margins then, like I did before, but I'll use a percentage with that. So margin top, 45%. Okay, also pretty good. But what if I have a lot of content in here? So I'll put in just a whole bunch of hello worlds. That's not really very centered anymore. I mean, the red part is, but I want all this hello world stuff to be, I want that to be vertically centered too. I mean, obviously, if I have like 1 million of them, it's not going to be vertically centered at all, but even just getting rid of a few of them. Like here, I'll have 3. Still not vertically centered. So if I want this thing to be vertically centered, then I have to go back and I have to adjust whatever the margin top is. And if the center of that is going to change at all, like if that's something where I'm just going to be adding in text or removing text, then that's going to be a huge pain in the ass. Walter.
Okay, is the div still centered if you resize the screen?
What, this thing?
Yeah.
Good question. Yeah, it should be, since I did it in percentages. Oh. Well, that's a problem. Well, why is that not working? Oh, that's because I gave this body a minimum height of 100%. Okay, so I'll get rid of that. And now what? Okay, so far so good.
Is that because it's centered on the page and not on the viewport or something?
No. No, it's supposed to not be centered.
Oh.
Yeah. This is expected failure. What I'm getting at is that
I'm trying to guess at why it doesn't resize itself.
it's because right now I have the margin top of 35%. Oh, you know, that's a good. Oh, you know what it is? It's because margin percentages are, for some bizarre reason, based on the width of the container, not on the height of the container. I'll be damned if I know why. So yeah, that's not going to work very well. Anything else I could try? I mean, I've already sort of given away that this is like sort of a pursuit of failure. Because there really isn't a good way to do this. And this is such a like trivial, like really obvious use case. It's like completely bizarre to me that it's taken this long to have a good way of vertically aligning things. I don't know why that is. But it wasn't until like within the past couple of years that there actually was a foolproof way of vertically aligning things. And so that is this famous thing called Flexbox, which we're going to use here. Flexbox to the rescue, sure enough. Okay, that makes it look a lot more scary than it really is. I'm going to just do this a little bit at a time. Excuse me. Okay, so there you are. I'm going to give, I don't need any of that, I don't need any of this, just the body and the div. That doesn't even need to be display block. Doesn't even need that. I'll leave it at that. Cool, so now I'm down to a div that has an outline and some width. I'm going to do body display flex. I don't know if I can do this without referring to my notes. And then down here, I'm going to say, let's see, align. Nope, can't do it without looking at the notes. So I'm going to look at the notes. Let's see, justify. Ah, that's right, I need to put it up here. Justify content center. Let's see what this did so far. All right, so that's centered. That's a pretty good start. And now I need to get this vertically aligned, so I'm going to do align items center. And this isn't going to do it yet, which is because the body, I'll give an outline. The body ends partway down the page, so I'm going to make the body a bit bigger. Give the body a height of, I don't know, 95% of the page or something. Still didn't work because CSS is stupid. Say what? A flex correction? No, don't need it. There we go. It's vertically centered. And now I can move this around, and it's going to stay vertically centered. It's kind of hard to tell because I'm doing this height of 95% thing. So I'm going to say height of 100%. So the thing I'm trying to get around right here is you can see, I got you, Jeremy, 1 second. You can see there's like this little border around the body. That's because in Chrome, the body has a margin of like 10 pixels by default, which is stupid. There we go. Cool. So now I can shrink it. I can make it any size I want, except apparently I can't because the body also probably needs to be, oh, no, there we go. I just got QuickTime. QuickTime. Isn't that erotic? Anyway, so this is what, oh, yeah. QuickTime is great. Thanks for tuning in, people at home. Yeah, so now CSS has finally solved the problem of vertical alignment. Jeremy, what was your question?
I was just wondering, when you put the HTML, you said the HTML at 95% and the body is 95%.
What's that all about?
Is it 95% of 95%?
Probably.
The body's referencing the whole thing.
It was probably 95% of 95%, so that was a dumb thing to do. So doing HTML with a height of 100%, that makes sure that basically everything in this window here is going to be the height of, well, the window. That sounds kind of dumb. You would think that the body would always be the height of the window too, but as we saw before, It's not. The body just takes up however much space it needs to accommodate the content inside it. So when I'm creating a new web page, I pretty much always give the HTML a height of 100%, and I give the body, I actually don't do height 100%, I usually do min height 100%. Actually, an even better thing to do would be to skip this altogether. Slight tangent. I'm using this VH thing. So VH stands for viewport height. This really isn't even part of the lesson, but it's a cool thing to know. There's VH for viewport height and VW for viewport width. So if I make something 100 VH, that means it's going to be 100% the height of the viewport being this window right here. If I make it 100 VW, that means it's going to be 100% the width of this window right here. So if I make this thing like 50 VH, it's going to be 50% the height of the viewport. And there you go. This is really nice. This is actually really, really useful for preventing things like I was just talking about with the body not occupying the entire height of the page. And it's nice for mobile stuff too. It's pretty recent, so your grandma might not be able to use it on her computer, but it is nice. Anyway, back to Flexbox. So now this thing is vertically centered. Woo! So Flexbox is, I don't really even know why it's called Flexbox. I guess it's just because, like, it sort of makes rules for the space to flex. That's not a good explanation at all.
The internal lines that it's all derived from, they're called flex lines, but I don't know if they derive from the Flexbox name or...
But I'm just wondering, yeah, I'm wondering where the whole flex comes from to begin with. I don't really know, but Flexbox is really useful. Did you have a...
I only thought that it's predicated on this idea of wrapping, like with the rows and like the content inside the flex container is flexible.
Yeah, it's just when I think flex, I think of this, obviously, but I also think of, like, I don't know, something like, I don't know. That's a better answer than whatever I have. Oh yeah, well, we'll get into that. Actually, that's probably it. Anyway, yeah, Laura.
So the Flexbox container in this part is the body, is that correct?
Yes, and I'm going to break all that down in just 1 second, what all these things are. Okay, so when you declare display flex on something, you're making that something a flex container. So in this case, the flex container is body. And so here is body up here. Then you're going to declare a flex direction on it. The only reason I didn't on here is because the default is row, and as opposed to, say, column. Let me show you what the difference is. I'm going to get rid of all these hello worlds. Hello again. All right, so now I have these two things. So this is with a flex direction of row, and this is with a flex direction of column. Now they're on top of each other. So I'm basically saying, do I want everything inside this flex container to be horizontal or vertical? Do I want them to all stack up horizontally or vertically? The direction I choose is called the main axis. So if I choose a flex direction of row, then this is going to be my main axis. The thing across which things are aligned. So this would be for flex direction, right? Type in direction row, and then for flex direction column, the main axis would be y-axis. All right, questions so far? The main axis is just saying the direction in which these things are aligning. And you can also do column reverse, which should, here, let me give these things numbers. I'm going to say 1, hello world, 2, hello again. And this will put 2 on top of 1, as opposed to if I get rid of that reverse, now 1 is on top of 2. And I can do the same thing with rows. So row, it goes 1, 2, and then row reverse, it goes to 1. Still occupying the same main axis, it's just going in a different direction across it. Y'all with me so far? Cool. So we've done the direction. Now there are 2 other things, which are actually 3 other things. And I always get these confused. There's justify content, align items, and align content. And they actually don't really break down the way I wish they did. Let's see if I can play around with these to determine what does what. First off, I'm going to get rid of justify content. Okay, and so with justify content, because I'm doing row reverse, it's pushed everything over towards what's called the flex start. So the flex start is where the axis begins. If I'm doing row, then my flex start is here. Flex start, if not reverse. And over here, flex start, if reversed. Same thing down here. Flex start, not reversed. Flex start, reversed. So again, the flex start is where the axis begins. Its counterpart is the flex end, which is where the axis ends. Ends. I'm going to put this back to a regular old row, which will put my flex start over on the left-hand side of the page. And there it is. So there's that. So back to justify content. This says whether where I want my items to be along this main axis. I can do flex start, which is the default, and so that leaves them right where they are. I can also say flex end, which puts them on the opposite end. I can also say, well, let's see, Adam, what all do I have to choose from? I have center, which will put them all in the center. And then I have some interesting ones that are really nice from a layout perspective. I'm going to put in a couple more of these guys here. 3, 4. I'm going to do justify content space around. All right. And space between. One thing to notice here is that these all have the same amount of space around each one of them. So this, if you sort of imagine a box around it, the distance from here to here is the same as the distance from here to here, and the distance from here to here. Those are all the same. If I do space between, then everything is pushed to the edges, and it makes these, it sort of evenly distributes things across the entirety of the main axis, which I think looks really nice. So that's justify content. Justify content is justify content, how to spread things along main axis. Justify content is how to spread things along the main axis. When I say things, I mean the flex items. So you have a flex container, inside it are flex items. Walter.
So the space between, if you increase the width of your brush size, one pole, say on the sides.
Yep. So it's going to keep the space, well, the space between them constant. And if I do space around, it's going to put an equal amount of space around each one, including between this one and the wall. So there we go. And so now, again, the distance from here to here is the same as the distance from here to here, here to here, and here to here, and here to here, so on and so forth. You see what I'm saying? Cool. Questions so far? Yeah, John.
When it's space between margins, or sorry, the borders dangle off, is a box size?
It's just because I'm using outlines, and remember, outlines don't take up any space. So I can make these outlines like 100 pixels, and this is all going to stay in the exact same place. So outlines are like borders, except they don't take up any room on the page. Like everything else just totally ignores them, which makes them really, really handy for testing out different layout things. I use outline all the time. Other questions? Okay, so we've done justify content. That says how you want these things to be spread out along the main axis. And then there's align items, which is how you want things to be spread along the cross-axis. So we have the main axis. The cross-axis is the axis that is not the main axis. So on this one, this is the cross-axis. And then on this one, this is the cross-axis. So the cross-axis is always perpendicular to the main axis. And align items, well, it's either align items or it's align content that says where you want things to be on the cross-axis. So let's find out. I had align items center, that's what we're looking at right now. What happens when I get rid of that? That's interesting. It all stretches out. Let's try something else. What other values do we have to work with here? Align items. I'll try flex end. So this align items is where align items where you want flex items on cross-axis. So the cross-axis has its own flex start and its own flex end. So if I do flex start, it's going to go back up to the top. Remember, my main axis is horizontal here because I'm doing a row. So let's see, there's flex start, there's flex end, there's center, which is what I was doing at the beginning, which just puts everything right in the center of the cross-axis. And there's also stretch, which makes these expand to fill the entirety of the cross-axis. So they expand to fill the entirety of the cross-axis. So there's that. And then the one last piece of the puzzle is align content, which is the exact same thing except along the main axis. Pardon me, overwriting stuff. Where you want flex items along main axis. This probably isn't going to do anything right here because I only have one line of things. So let me make a whole bunch more elements here. All right, so now I have a whole bunch more elements. And so what's going on right now is there's this property called Flexwrap. Flexwrap means, do you want, like, so I got all of these things that are supposed to be, what, 100 pixels wide. Flexwrap is how I set if all of these things altogether would normally go off the axis, like it's too big for the axis, what do you want to have? Right now, by default, what I have is no wrap set up, which means just keep trying to cram everything onto the axis. But if I do wrap, we should see them. I've actually never done this before. Let's see what happens. There we go. So now they start wrapping around. And this align content thing, align content, I'm not even sure what will happen at this point. I think it'll determine where these guys go. So that should, aha, interesting. So that overrode the stretch. So if you haven't figured it out, Flexbox is confusing. And it takes a lot of just sort of tinkering around with different things. Fortunately, because Flexbox is so popular, there are lots of sites that help you sort of tinker around with it. I'm going to try not using stretch and see if I can get this working properly. So I'm going to do flex end here and flex end here. My hypothesis is that it'll put everything at the bottom right. Well, it'll put everything at the bottom, but not at the right. I wonder why that is.
Because you have space around.
Oh, no, it's at the center. Yeah, so I'm still kind of confused about the difference between align content and justify content. Like, conceptually I get it, but actually doing it in practice is a little weird. It'll make a lot more sense when we actually start doing stuff with it, though. So, what I would like, well, let's see. So the next thing, we're going to solve another Flexbox problem, which is, actually, we're not going to solve another Flexbox problem, because this is just going over what we went over before. Instead, I'm going to ask you guys to read some stuff about Flexbox. So let's see. The first two are actual readings. The last one, wow. That's disconcerting. The first two are readings, and the last one is something Jesse just showed me, which is like a site to sort of play around with the different Flexbox properties. What I really want you to pay attention to, though, out of these three, so the first one is more like how Flexbox works. The second one is a little bit of that, but it also has really interesting examples of the problems solved by Flexbox. So for instance, let's see, vertical centering, what we talked about before, like an age-old problem of CSS. And it has a couple other things that it talks about what Flexbox does for them as well. So I'd really like you to pay attention to this as you're going through it. And then also as you're going through it, write down the definitions of these four properties here. I'll blow them up. So flex basis, flex shrink, flex grow, and order. And try to come up with Eli 5, explain like I'm 5 definitions, so not just like copying stuff from the documentation because that's really hard to understand. So take, let's say 10 minutes to flip through these things. Actually, you know what? I'm going to say 15 minutes because I really would like you guys to like really read through these and like tinker around with this Flexbox Explorer thing and just play with it, and then we'll reconvene afterwards. Okay? Okay.